Hi, everybody. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. This is the Tech Talks for nonprofits. Make sure you're in the right spot. Today's topic is website essentials, building and maintaining an effective website. My name is Claire Odie. I work for the Community Foundation of North Central Washington, and I'm their Director of Community Engagement, and I oversee our Nonprofit Practices Institute. And we are so excited to partner with NCW Tech Alliance on this series of Tech Talks that we do on a quarterly basis. We will probably go ahead and jump right in because these are short, bite-sized talks, and we want to make sure we get to the meat of the presentation ASAP. But I know folks will be kind of hopping on here in the next couple of minutes. So welcome, everybody. So Tech Talks for Nonprofits, this is a series that we're doing. It's a free quarterly webinar brought to you by the Nonprofit Practices Institute and the NCW Tech Alliance. Typically, they're moderated by Martin Straub of Simple Power IT. I will be your moderator today, Claire Odie from the Community Foundation. These Tech Talks are designed to provide valuable insights into various technology topics that are relevant to nonprofit organizations. They're, like I said, just bite-sized, concise sessions. We typically have about 30 minutes for the presentation, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. So that's optional if you can stick around for the Q&A session after the presentation. We wanted to make these just a perfect, easy fit for busy nonprofit professionals to be able to join on your lunch break. So if we can ask you to please mute yourself as you enter, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, next, just a quick introduction to the Tech Alliance. Their mission is to bring people and technology resources together to support entrepreneurs, STEM education, and technology adoption in North Central Washington. Since 1999, they've built a proven track record of delivering high-quality programs that engage, inspire, and connect our community. So you can check them out at ncwtech.org. They've got lots of amazing resources for our region. And then the Nonprofit Practices Institute. So this is a longtime partnership between the Icicle Fund and the Community Foundation of North Central Washington. We help nonprofit organizations strengthen their skills and grow their potential with affordable and accessible trainings, workshops, and various network opportunities. Just a couple things that are coming up. We have an ongoing opportunity. We have a nonprofit board certificate course that is free for all NCW residents. So make sure to share that with your board of directors. They can take that on their own time, online, anytime they want, and go through the course. It's fantastic. We also have our strategic consulting grant application is open right now. Those are $5,000 grants for organizations to work with a nonprofit consultant on some sort of organizational development project. So strategic planning, succession planning, financial strategy, anything like that. We also have a grant writing series coming up in March and April. Those are unfortunately pretty much sold out. I think we have maybe one spot left in our Moses Lake workshop in March. So check that out if you're not already signed up. And then finally, just wanted to let you know that we have a brand new learning calendar where you can see all of these events in one place. So both the events that NPI puts on, as well as our partners like the Tech Alliance, the Equity Alliance, the library system, anything that's relevant to nonprofits, we're putting up on our learning calendar, as well as some of our statewide partners that have virtual offerings. So check us out at the cfncw.org/NPI for all of that great stuff. And now I get to introduce Carly Siroky. She's the owner of Karma Designs and the founder of 509 Female Founders. We're super excited to have her here today to talk about website essentials. She has been very generous to say that if you have questions, she doesn't mind you interrupting her. So feel free to put them in the Q&A, in the chat. You can even raise your hand and come off mute and ask your question. So she's gracious to be able to offer that. And then we'll also have an opportunity at the end for additional Q&A. So, Carly, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Claire, and Conrad, who's working in the background. He's like the Wizard of Oz sort of figure. Firstly, I would love, if any of you are comfortable, turn on your video. All I see are names, and I'd love to see faces so I know who I'm talking to. And extra credit if you rename yourself with your nonprofit. So you can click on the little 3 dots on your video and then say rename, because then I'll know even more about who I'm talking to. I do see one name I recognize. Hi, Anna. But yes, I look forward to learning about you and your nonprofit's needs, etc. And this is a high-level talk. I'm also waiting for the person in the room who knows more than web design about web design than me, so they can correct something that I'm saying. But we're not going to get too advanced. We're going to look at the 7 steps to building a website that we recommend, and talk about some preliminary strategy, talk about the cost investment, things like that. But as Claire said, I'm very casual. This is our fireside chat, guys. I have tea. That's a llama, right? So I wanted to keep it nice and conversational. So please do feel free to interrupt at any time. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. So off we go. About me. So I am a volunteer patroller at Mission Ridge. I love doing all sorts of outdoor things, paddleboarding, etc. I really kind of suck at being at a desk, to be perfectly honest. And I do marketing, as you will learn more, and love to be on stage, but really am terrible at email. So just to be perfectly honest about all that. And about my agency, Karma. So we're a branding and web agency with roots here in North Central Washington. And we build, guide, and launch brands that we're passionate about. I'm not going to read every slide, I promise. But that one, I felt compelled. Some of the clients that we've worked with, Multicare, Washington's National Park Fund, basically anyone doing something to create a rising tide that lifts all boats. So something that makes us feel good when we sleep at night, which is probably all of you too. And you can see some of the spread of where they are, mostly on the West Coast, but also up in Alaska and East Coast as well. But some names you might recognize here. We have 6 team members. It's owned by me. Woo! And we're a member 1% for the planet, accessibility best practices, something that we focus on. And I think it's maybe more than 27 now, but a lot of Washington-based clients. Here's my awesome team, including at least 2 folks who know more about web design than me. And so I will take notes if you say something and I'm like, and I will ask them, but I hope that they would be proud of me today for trying, because my job is creative direction and the big picture. And so it helps to have a team to help. And we also do translation. I just wanted to mention that because it's becoming more and more important for our clients, is multicultural marketing, and not just translating word for word, but considering the cultural context of what you're doing. So that is important to think about as well for websites and lots of things. Let's look at some cool work. Yeah. And still not seeing anyone's video, but if you want to write to me in the chat, just to let me know that you're there, you're hearing me. Ha ha. That was a funny joke, Carly. Here we are, the Center for Earth, Energy, and Democracy. We built this website, launched it last year, turned out really great. Also made this site for a group called Tech for Housing, which makes the tech influx in first the Seattle area, I don't know if they've expanded yet, responsible for the housing crisis that they caused, which I think is very cool. And also help them with strategy. This is a first generation Vietnamese woman-owned company in the Bay Area that works structural engineers in affordable housing, among other things. Very inspiring. And we helped build their website. Housing Connector, a nonprofit, started in Seattle, has expanded to, Denver, Dallas, and Portland, that came to us for a lot of market research and then made their own website. So the website you can see there, we actually did not build, but I included it because we gave them the directions to build it themselves, which is something that we'll talk about. Then we've got Resource Media, a nonprofit based in technically Beaverton, Oregon, but they have an office here in Seattle. I'm in Seattle today. And work all over in health, equity, justice, and sustainability. So badass. And we did their interactive annual report 2 years in a row. And yeah, then I wanted to talk about our process. So and by the way, I'm going to go back to a couple of these just to give you an idea of what size of nonprofits is. I'm sure you all have a range of revenue and operating budget and things like that, team size, Resource Media. And I looked this up because it's public. You know that. 9 million in revenue. Cool. Good for them. Housing Connector, about 4 million, and Seed, 2 million. I didn't look these guys up. And this is a for-profit. So back to the process. I would first like to ask the room, why are you here today? And feel free to type that into the chat. What is it about your website that needs love? Do you not have one, for example? And you're just getting started? Are parts of it not functional in ways that you would like it to be? And also, why is a website important? Well, where did we used to go for information? I mean, if we go way, way back, petroglyphs, we won't go that far back. But it's not the library anymore. It's not even the newspaper, maybe a little for some of us, but it's our pocket, right? Mine's over here. Where do we go to find information online? And the thing about websites that's so critical is that if people can't A, find you easily, or when they do, B, navigate your website easily, they're gone. Sorry, but that's the hard truth. And so we're in a very challenging time, and I feel it, and I work in marketing, that unfortunately people's attention spans, et cetera, are very small. And so we need to do our best to build something that's going to work. So along with that, I also want you to know about your business goals, and I will go to the next slide eventually, but this is the Carly is talking to you about important things part of the presentation. Going back to that why, if you don't already know, if you're starting a company or you're at the 5-year, 10-year mark, what is my next 5 years, 10 years, et cetera, going to look like? What are my, strengths and weaknesses? What are my growth opportunities? Don't bother touching your website till you figure that out. And you can talk to Claire and her organization. You can talk to me. I also work as a business consultant. The grant that she mentioned sounds fabulous for that, but get some strategy in place. And so now I will go to the next slide because strategy is everything.
And Carly, just to let you know, the chat in video is disabled, which is why we haven't had a lot of chat activity. But it looks like folks can unmute themselves. And Katie, great. I think you had something that you wanted to jump in and say.
Go for it.
Oh, this is Katie Kimball. And yes, that was all. We can't even raise our hands. So that's all. Yeah, I didn't know if there's any way that you can have us be able to join the video and chat. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Katie.
We'll have Conrad see if he can work on it.
Hi, Katie. It's good to see everybody.
Do what Katie did and just unmute yourself and be bold and interrupt me. I really don't care. So let's talk about this pyramid for a moment. So where is web design in this? Not at the bottom, right? It comes after a lot of steps that I would highly encourage you to think about and invest in first. And I'm not just saying that because they're my favorite steps, but they're really important. And so you really got to figure out who you are, who else is out there, et cetera, before we get there. So defining your brand. For example, does your nonprofit have a simple, memorable name? And love nonprofits, but lots of them are acronyms. Lots of them are very long acronyms. And if you can it down, for example, one of our clients was Weld in Seattle. Really cool group that helps individuals, systems impacted after incarceration, re-enter into society, find jobs, housing, et cetera. Weld. It's not an acronym. It's just a word. Do you know who your audience is? Exactly. I mean, could you point one out on the street? That person right there. Do you know their habits? Do you know their barriers? Who are your industry peers? Who's doing something similar? How are you different? And then all of that combined to say, what is your value proposition? What is your unique selling proposition? And those might sound like words that are more profit driven. They're also useful for nonprofits because y'all need to attract funding. And I don't like there's a term. If someone knows it, you can interrupt me. There's a term in your world for competition for money pools, and that, there's almost this territorialism around it. But the goal is not to mind what anyone else is doing, but to feel really strong in what you're doing so that it is just a no-brainer for someone to invest. So that's stuff that we can help with, but it's really, really important. So we talked about naming your audience, competitors, etc. Then you can move on to what's above. And we're joking about this in the green room. How much of an iceberg is below the surface of the water? 90%. And the website, the brochures, the business cards, the t-shirts, anything that you see is 10%. So we often jump to, I need a new website. What about your strategy? Have you done that 90% of the work yet? If you haven't, I wouldn't suggest moving on. I'm really dissuading you from building a website at all, aren't I? Okay. So step one, you're ready to build a website. You've done some branding, some market research. Like, let's go. Choose your team. So who's going to build it? Are you or someone else? And if it's in-house versus out-of-house, does that person have experience? And you may think, oh, it'll be cheaper and whatnot to build it myself. But will it be better? Will it be faster? All those things will accomplish what you want to. And so definitely choosing someone who has experience. And then if you are going to go out of house, someone who has experience in your industry is a plus, or at least working with nonprofits or a similar kind of site. Consider the RFP process. So a request for proposal. If you know exactly what you want, you can write it up into a little job description, so to speak, and then distribute it so that agencies like mine or freelancers can bid on the project and you can get closer to exactly what you want. Then in either case, in-house or out-of-house, recruit your client-side team. So who's going to be in charge of the project? Who are all the decision makers? And they hide under rocks, people. There's so many people you would not want to weigh in on things until the very last minute. And I speak from experience. It's often the spouse. Get them all in the same room and on the same page before you begin. Then deciding who's going to generate the content. Again, is it going to be in-house or out-of-house? And by content, I mean the text, the images, etc., that's going on the website, the stuff in it. This is a surprisingly big hang-up in the process, is somehow it gets overlooked by the agency or by the client who's going to write the content. And you're ready to publish the website, and the web designer says, okay, where's your content? And the client says, oh, I thought you were doing that. So be really clear on who's doing that part. Okay, and that is actually a good point to say that there are different ways of building a site or working with someone to build a site. You can have somebody make you a framework where you then put in your content, or you can have someone do the framework and put the content in for you and generate the content for you. A benefit of working with an agency like ours is that we do all of this: market research, branding, web design, content development. Then we can do your collateral, content strategy, blah, 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 blah. But being organized first really helps. So having your copywriting figured out, having an image library. I don't know how many of you have this already, but stock photography licenses, things like that. If you're going to have infographics on your site, video on your site, get that all together as you prepare to embark on the next step. So now we have handed it off to the first level of people actually building this thing for you or planning this thing for you. Let's say structural engineers, people like UX designers. So they are going to need your account information, admin access if we're working on your current site. They might also build it in a staging environment, which we'll talk about, but we're now doing user research. So this is a persona that we created for ourselves of our target clients. So we're thinking about what are their pain points, what are their abilities, what are their needs. Then we're going to think about platform selection. So you've probably heard of Squarespace, Shopify, WordPress, Wix, Google Sites, Which one do I choose? Here is a phrase that we use in the design world that if you're in charge of building this website, tattoo it on your face. Form follows function. In every kind of design, industrial design, graphic design, you don't start with, oh, we need a brochure. You start with what's the problem we're trying to solve? Okay, I'm trying to reach preteens to talk to them about sexual health. Okay, do you think you're going to reach them in a brochure? Probably not. So your end deliverable should not be a brochure. It should be probably something on social media, right? So you got to think about what kind of website platform meets my needs. Are you an e-commerce? Probably Shopify. Are you a DIY, very small nonprofit? Maybe Squarespace. Are you a larger nonprofit? WordPress. So you can talk to a consultant or someone like us about that, but choose the platform based on what you need it to do. Domain and hosting. So your domain is your URL. So ncwtech.org, something like that. Hosting is where all of this lives on a server somewhere. And then the platform where you build it is yet another thing. So there's 3: domain, hosting, and platform. Sometimes they're all combined. You can buy it all, shop for it all in one place. Sometimes you buy them separately. A little note on sustainability. So it is possible to have a more or less sustainable website. Don't know if you knew that. But some hosting companies, depending on how they get their power, if it's renewable resources, affect the sustainability of your website. Really cool things like, is your website black? Which I really want to redesign my website to be black. Why would that be more sustainable? Let's think about it. I want to give you guys a moment to think about it. If somebody wants to unmute themselves and be bold and guess why a black website is more sustainable. Nope, got a shy crew here. Less energy to display on your screen. Pretty simple. But if hundreds of thousands of people are looking at your website and they're all looking at it and it's black, it's less power involved on your Mac, on your phone, or whatever to display it. So cool. Okay, I'm nerding out a little bit about websites. I had a little note about what's the difference between web design for nonprofits and for-profits. Nothing and some things. So again, think about what's the problem you're trying to solve. Obviously, they're different audiences, so they will have different needs, which require different features. But also don't let that restrict you. Don't think like a nonprofit. What would a nonprofit website look like? No, think about what your website should look like. It needs to fit your personality, your brand, your story. Think like solve for the problems that you're choosing to address in the world. Be the organization that your donors will swoon over. That's my little TED talk there. Okay, moving on. So design. Now
Carly, can I interrupt real quick?
Please.
We just had a couple questions come in.
Oh,
can
great.
you explain what a stock photo license is?
Yeah. Okay. So do as I say, not as I do. I don't own this picture. That's bad. I found it on Google Images. If I put this on our website, I could get sued for sure. So you need to own the license to any image that you did not create. You also need to be careful with any image you did create if it has person or property in it. Kind of think like a journalist, you got to get permission for things. And so if you need a picture of someone at a computer drinking tea, then you can go to any number of stock photography websites and find one and buy it. And you can buy credits, you can buy a package, you can buy them individually, but it gives you the right to use it in certain contexts. Some of them have a limited license, some of them have a giant license, depending on how many views it's going to get, blah, 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 blah. But then you are not at risk for copyright infringement. So definitely need to be very careful about that. And stock photos, I should keep going, but I have a lot to say about stock photos. There's stock photos and there's stock photos. Some are better than others. And there's some really cool sites out there like Tonal, et cetera, TONL, that have like more diverse imagery. For example, Unsplash is okay. It's like a free kind of stock photo site. But of course, as a creative, I'm like, compensate people for their work. There's some really cool stock sites out there where the people who made it are getting, the remuneration and the recognition. And I think that's rad. So that's, another question, Claire, did you say there were two?
Well, there was another question about the sustainability piece and how you have a more sustainable website. And we actually have some great suggestions that have also been added to the Q&A from Connie. She gave the example of building for future scalability, choosing a hosting company that has sustainability practices in mind, using a platform that's well supported. Do you have any other things you wanted to throw out there, Carly?
Yeah. So carbon neutrality in general, you can purchase carbon credits, I believe, to offset the carbon emissions of your website. We are a member of 1% for the Planet. So we donate 1% of all of our revenue to an environmental nonprofit at the end of each year. Sustainable website design is a whole thing. And I'll just give a shout out to my homie Hannah Fisher of Hard Refresh. That's what her company does, is they only build sustainable websites. So again, when I was going to give this talk, I was like, oh, there's so many people who could give this talk better than me on certain things. And sustainable web design is her jam. So head on over there. She does a fantastic job. But yeah, it's a whole new world. And there's lots to think about there, because we don't want these to go away. We like icebergs. They're very pretty. Okay. Shout out with more questions, please, at any time. So now we're moving on to design. So we're starting to think about the user experience, UX. And so how is someone going to navigate your site? How do we arrange the navigation to make it intuitive, as easy as possible, and not make them frustrated? Websites are such silly things because when they don't work, we want to throw our phones in the ocean. And we don't want that. And so what we do is we work from a lo-fi, low fidelity to hi-fi prototype, where we are playing around with this and creating the best solution, which will get the person from point A to point B the fastest. And so we're creating this in a staging environment that we will then hand off to the developer to produce. This is also a time when we start to think about, well, from the beginning, we're thinking about accessibility, which has to do with ADA compliance. So is the text big enough? Is the color contrast sharp enough? Will this work on a screen reader? Things like that. And we're always thinking about the call to action. If you don't have this on your website right now, this is one thing. If you take away one thing from today, what do you want people to do? It seems so simple, but it's often overlooked. Do you want them to buy? Do you want them to register for an event? Do you want them to create an account? Do you want them to pay an invoice? Make it so easy and so clear what you want them to do. Okay. So here's some low fidelity wireframes, some high fidelity prototypes, visual mockups. This is built in Figma, a program that UX designers use. There are several. And then now we're getting into step 4, development. So now we've handed it off sometimes it's the same person, design and development, to a developer, web developer. And this person might have front end or back end experience, which is a whole thing. Back end is basically just databases, not just, but it is more complex, JavaScript, things like that. And basically what that person is doing is they are taking elements that the UX designer has created and using that component library to build out parts of your site. So pro tip is you want to have puzzle pieces. You want to have like, every time we have text, it's going to look like this and this. Every time we have an image, it's going to look like this and this. Because what developers hate more than anything is that everything is unique. You need to create a style format where it's variations on a theme, if that makes sense. This is the time when they'll start to populate the site with content. If there's custom coding involved, like you can see over here, that's when they will do that. Work in any plugins integration and start to think about SEO. The whole time we're thinking about SEO, even the you as our experienced designer, search engine optimization, because again, going back to what's the problem you're trying to solve is if you want someone to find you, you need to think like them, not like you. So I'll use an example. I worked in or worked with people who are in dog behavior, which is a new field, right? It's like dog psychology, and it's very high level, and you figure out all these issues and help the person help their dog. Someone's not going to know what that is. They're going to type into Google, how the hell do I get my dog to stop barking? That's what you want to figure out, and then orient your site around it. And there are ways to do SEO. It's another whole thing. Everything's so specialized these days in web design, where again, I would ask someone else to tell you more about this. But in general, what you're shooting for is putting the words that people would search for on your website. And if not on your website, in your website. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here we are in the code of a website, and you can put words that people would be searching for here. So you're like, I don't want to put dog trainer on my website because I'm not a dog trainer. I do dog behavior. Okay, great. Put dog trainer in the code because people are still going to type that into Google to try to find you. So that is important to know. And then we move on to testing and launch. So very, very important part that, again, often gets overlooked. But once we're done creating this thing, we figure we just turn the key and boop, 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 it works perfectly. Not always. You got to test it in different browsers. You got to test it on different screen sizes. Does it adapt from, desktop to tablet to phone? Is it accessible? Let's look at the analytics, little Q&A, quality assurance, or QA, domain migrations. And now we're ready to get it to point from where it was before to the new site, things like that. So there's lots of little glitchy things that can happen during this time. That's normal. And there's a certain period where you just give yourself and your developer, please, grace, to figure all that out. Then step 6, often overlooked, I guess there's 6 steps, not 7, is training and maintenance. So the way we like to do it is train you to update your website. We also like to build websites so that you can update your own website. And so we're identifying someone on the client side who's going to be the admin. Other than that, I would not advise the rest of the things to necessarily be your responsibility. The next few things: security, software updates, plugins. Those are things that are nice to have a web team to just maintain for you in the background on a little maintenance plan. But things that you can help with on an ongoing basis is content strategy. So what are you putting on your site that's new? Are you posting new events? Are you posting blogs? Things like that. This is inbound marketing. So you're trying to make people come to you by putting relevant things on the web. And then for SEO, there's sponsored search results. You probably see those ads. And then long tail just means, rather than a short keyword dog trainer, I'm Googling this, you would have a long tail like how to get my dog to stop barking. And if you find out that people are typing that phrase into Google, name your blog post that, how to get my dog to stop barking. Little pro tip. So here's me. If you want to get in touch, I like to have a funny picture because I don't like to take life too seriously. But please feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's our website. And happy to help, whether that's with your website, your brand, market research. I also work as a business consultant. So if you're at the very beginning and you're like, whoa, we need to actually think about our whole plan here, great. I've done my job today, and that's lovely. And I hope you walk away with that. But otherwise, I talked a lot, and we have a few minutes left for Q&A, official Q&A, if you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carly. This was fantastic. We do have a few comments in
Great.
emphasis that brand style guides are super helpful. So that was a good thing that someone mentioned in there. Tara from the Wenatchee Valley Museum was just wondering about plugins. This is kind of a more technical question about how to replace plugins without potentially breaking your site. You have any advice about that?
definitely a question that I would ask my developer. I would hope that would be something that they could test in a different environment. And that's usually always what you do, is if you think about like making a sauce and you don't want to salt your whole thing and ruin your roux, you take a little piece of it and you put it in a cup to the side and you season it there, and then you season the rest of it. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of the same concept as if you can mimic it in an offsite environment, then you can apply it to the onsite environment. I would hope that that's how you would do it. But I would ask my developer on that one. I'm sorry, that's not my area of expertise.
Great, thank you. Marlene from Sustainable NCW was wondering about recommendations about best translation options.
Yes. Feel free to get in touch. My colleague Ritzio, who I had on there, is a trained translator, and she's amazing. I also have connections with a company called Verbio, not VRBO, VERBIO. Victoria, I believe, is the CEO, and they do big stuff like for airline companies and whatever, but they do massive multicultural marketing. Those are a couple that come to mind. But yeah, we are just working on a quote for a company that we're looking at census data. Okay, the population is about 6% Latinx. We definitely want to make sure that certain elements of this work are bilingual. We gather survey data from all the groups. So it's great to consider that and make it inclusive.
And just another quick suggestion, Cafe, local nonprofit, they have a kind of a newer translation wing of their organization. So they have certified interpreters. They also translate documents. They have quite a few different levels of translation services. So if you want to reach out to them, Cafe is another great local option.
Nice.
Someone also asked about 509 female founders. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, guys. So I need some empathy here for a minute, if you don't mind. So I started this mastermind called 509 Female Founders. It's a 9-month intimate cohort learning experience. It was super awesome. I piloted it last year, and it is for up to 12 women business owners in 509 Eastern Washington maximum to learn together. And it starts with market research. It goes to branding, a different topic every month, finance, human resources, operations. It's hard skills. And it's hybrid, in-person, virtual. We have rotating local women-owned venues who host. We did online expert guest speakers. There's an audiobook that goes along with it every month, and then like a Slack channel or something to keep it going in the background. And if you're sensing that sounds like a lot, that is why I postponed it. I did most of this, and I was so exhausted after 1 year that I was like, I can't do it again. So I really want to do it again, maybe next year. But it was an awesome experience. People really liked it. They saw massive growth for their businesses. One woman started her own real estate brokerage. One started a mobile IV therapy company. It was pretty phenomenal what they accomplished. But stay tuned. 509femalefounders.com. You can get on our wait list. But just send me some good vibes, because it was burnout central. Holy moly. Like, it was a ton of fun. But as you all know, it's so easy to do when you're the only person running something, or it's just, volunteer burnout for your nonprofits. It's a thing.
That sounds amazing. But yeah, makes sense to maybe take a year off then get it restarted.
Yeah, I'm clearly still recuperating. So
do we have any final questions? It looks like we got through everything in the Q&A. Connie had another tip, just that as a web developer, it's great when clients can bring new content to her to be able to keep things refreshed. So that was a great tip. Thanks, Connie.
Yay, we have a developer. See, ask Connie about plugins.
Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll just wrap up and say thank you again so much, Carly, for sharing your expertise and learning a little bit more about your services. And for everyone else, just know that this was recorded. So we will be posting this both on the Tech Alliance's website as well as the NPI website on the Community Foundation. So please know that this resource is available to you and you can share it with your organizations. Marlene just had a shout out on the Q&A. Thank you. Great ideas and reminders. So that's wonderful. Tech Alliance, thank you so much for hosting this amazing event, and we'll see you next quarter for the next Tech Talk. Bye, everybody.